Hello everybody, John here, and today onto the garage we're going to do a battery change on Purdy the XK8. Regulars to the channel will know I've recently completed what we've been calling the brake saga and swapped out all the braking system. Since then I've done a little bit of gentle running in with the car, and unfortunately I've got various messages on my dashboard. They include stability control fail, driver's door we can ignore, and traction control fail. Using my cheap OBD2 scanner, you can see a video on that elsewhere on the channel, I've cleared all of the error messages and those same things returned. Fortunately, you might say, whilst I was staring at the dashboard, parked up on a little run out, and considering options, engine running, in park, it also threw gearbox failure, which it couldn't have known there was a bit gearbox failure because we weren't moving. And then that went away, and then traction control came back, which actually gave me a clue that maybe this is just a battery related fault. Whilst the car was having the brakes sorted out in my garage, it was probably up on the ramp for about, let's say, 3 weeks. I never got started because my feet wouldn't reach that high, and actually the battery did run down and wouldn't start the car, which I recharged, everything seems fine, so actually it could be that the battery is throwing these faults. XK8s and XKRs are very particular about their batteries. If they're not in good condition or charging conditions aren't in good condition, they do throw all sorts of fault. Could still be that one of the wheel sensors has gone down, that's completely possible, having disturbed them, but I've decided that it's time to change the battery anyway. Practice what you preach, John. If you suspect a fault and it's not a flat tyre, it's usually the battery. Then work to everything else. Unfortunately, batteries for the XK8 are not the cheapest. I'll put a link in the description below to the battery I've actually selected. I think I paid about £140. So this is in the UK, it's 2020. So they're not the cheapest of batteries if you're going to buy decent quality, but don't skimp out. Certainly don't get a smaller battery or one that you think will do. It just won't do the job. You need to have a good high capacity battery for an XK8. Talked many a time about the fact that the instruments in the XK8 are not what you would call accurate. They're more indicators than they are instruments, and there you see my rock solid 13 volts, which it isn't. However, I got this nice little gadget that I keep plugged into my cigarette lighter, and it's basically my USB charger point, but it has a voltage meter built in. You can see actually the car is running at 14.2, that's supposed to be a V, volts, 14.3 volts, not 13, which miraculously it always is when it's running. And that gives you an indication of how well the car's charging. So I know my charging system's in good nick, and I can keep that there, and it gives me early warnings of all sorts of things, and it's not in the way because I would definitely have something here with USBs anyway. My cover doesn't close over it, my ashtray cover. For those who don't know the XK8, that's where it is. But it does mean I can just plug in my little charger leads to do whatever I want without any real effort. When you turn the car off, and then if I turn it back on to ignition, it gives you the voltage in the battery. And as you can see, it drops, which you would expect, but you would expect a good battery to hold very close to 13 volts, if not more than like 13 and a half. So I'm on 12.9, and I know from experience if I leave the car standing, that will go to about 12, maybe even 11.9 volts. There it goes, it's on its way. So it's past its prime for sure. Now these are quite nice little gadgets. They also have another feature. If you plug something into them as a USB to charge it up, like your phone, it will actually alternate between showing the voltage that the car's running at, and that changes to an A and tells you the ampage that your individual device is pulling, which is just interesting more than anything. So I'll put a link to that in the description below as well. I find that very useful and quite discreet. This is the battery that I've bought. I've gone for Yuasa because it's a brand that I trust. It's a very good brand, and I have done some work for Yuasa in the UK previously, which gives me an added degree of respect for the brand, having seen what they do and how they do it. I've gone for the Silver 5000. It's got the 5-year guarantee, though few of us ever work on applying these guarantees. It's obviously a mark of the company's theory as to how long this is going to last. I've got HSB019 is the serial number type of this battery. Basically any 019 battery will fit physically. 100 amp hour, you can see that it's a bit reflective. 100 amp hour is how many amps this can deliver over a period, so 100 amps in an hour, and 900 amps is the maximum cranking voltage ampage, sorry, so the current that it can put out really rather quickly if it needs to for things like the starter motor. The XK8 is a car that uses a vent. The battery is inside the car in a sealed compartment, which if anything is only linked to the cabin, so you want to make sure you get a battery with a vent. You can pull that and put your vent pipe into it. Also has the indicator window, and this is basically a little built-in hydrometer, which, or it's hygrometer actually, I believe is the correct pronunciation, and it's just a float in a little window, and if it's floating at the right level you should see the green, and that means everything's good. If you can't see the green, then it needs recharging. If it goes to the white colour, I think it's the white on this rather than a red, then no good. This has failed. First of all, let's get the battery out of the car. Careful with your back, lift with the legs. And we'll just remove a couple of items for easier viewing, though not necessarily for doing this job. I'm going to take the floor out. You only really need to remove this panel. But I'm going to take the floor out as well. That makes it a lot easier for you to see what I'm doing. First mission, release the battery, and we're using a Torx T40 bit to undo the bolts. They go all the way through to the floor of the XK8. Could leave this back one in because you can hinge off like I have, but I just want to examine the battery tray properly. Next you want to remove your battery terminals. It's a 10mm spanner if you've got the original fitment leads. There's actually been some interesting discussion online reference my battery leads. We did a previous video, this is very early XK8, first 1500 cars, because this cable is not standard. I think what we've established through some of you kind viewers is this is the very late version that was used on the XJS, and it's probably parts been engineering to use up these, which are rather expensive cables on my car. But quality of battery terminal leads is actually pretty important with the XK8 because it's so finicky about its battery. So maybe worth actually investing in good quality cables if yours looks tatty. Another one of our subscribers mentioned that he'd got a loose braided cable here, probably aftermarket, and it was getting all sorts of faults and wouldn't start the car, and he wrapped a self-amalgamating tape around the braid to compress it so all the bits of metal touched each other again, got the car going. So again, just shows you how sensitive these cars are to the quality of the battery and the quality of the connections that they've actually got. Always undo the negative first. Lots of people ask why. It shouldn't matter, surely. The good practice part of it, the good common sense is, I'm using a metal spanner here. This battery's connected. If I touch this spanner to metal, it doesn't matter, because this is earth. It's going to the metal of the car. So I'm not doing anything. That's fine. So undoing this, touch to metal, no problem. Take this lead off, took it away. Now, if I undo this one, the positive, and I touch to metal, equally it doesn't matter because the other ends are unconnected. And it's the same reason that you would connect them positive first, earth last, so that if you touch the wrong things, you're not going to cause any problems. Handles. Lift from above, lean over the wheel arch, and then you should be able to get it straight up and out. Now, I know the lighting's not the best, it's a funny old day. This is the breather hose, and it's come out with the battery, which is fine. Give that a wriggle and put it to one side. You're going to need to refit it. There's a grommet down there, I'll show you in a moment. It has to go through. If you don't do that, your boot floor will corrode. So, taking out good quality battery, Yuasa. As you can see, this one is a YB X3019. Mine is a HSB019. It's the 019 part which tells you the physical size of the battery, whether it's going to fit, where the terminals are, etc, etc. However, the battery I've taken out is a 95 amp hour 850 amp battery. The one I'm putting in is a 100 amp hour 900 cranking amps battery, so that a little bit better, hence the silver 5000 versus the YBX 3000. Essentially the same physical shape and size. Technology moves on a little bit with batteries, not hugely, it has to be said, with lead acid, but the new one will be a little bit different inside. You can see the window here on the old battery next to the handle. You swing over, the window on this one is in a different location, so it is physically a different battery. We're inside the trunk, and it's a good opportunity to check a couple of things whilst you've got your battery out. A couple of things we could call secrets if we wanted to. Oops. Lift up our carpet here, and you have one of your visible VIN numbers. Isn't giving me any grief today, and as long as I keep my other systems in good condition, i.e. I can open the boot using the special keyhole, then all is good. But that's how it should fit. Mine wasn't quite positioned like that. Loop back round underneath the unit, and that way it won't get trapped. Check the area under your battery for any evidence of corrosion. Should not be anything. And all this yellow spot stuff is the original wax coating applied in the factory. It's basically the overspray of that. Now hopefully you can see a little grommet there. That is where this breather tube needs to be poked back through. It's a very soft grommet, so just give it a push. That wants to go back into the battery when we've installed it. Want to know the birthday of your car? Always very difficult to tell exactly. Records aren't very good, VIN numbers won't take you to the date, etc, etc. This is probably as close as you can get to a birth certificate. So we're now looking back towards the rear of the car. There's a spare wheel and there's a sticker, and that is applied when the various modules for the electronic control units are put into place. And you see it literally has a date, which is 21st of the 8th 96. That's as close as you're going to get to a birthday of your car. The engine will be older than that because obviously it was manufactured off-site, and therefore may have a few weeks to a month's head start. But in terms of putting your car together, if that sticker's still intact, that is as close as you're going to get to a birthday. So lower it into position. As long as you've taken the little red cork that comes installed in the vent hole in the end of the battery, then you can pop your vent pipe into the end. Put your battery bracket back on. Doesn't have to be very tight. Imagine the effort that would be needed to get this battery to jump out the car. Next, using a permanent marker, write the date that you've installed this battery on this battery, because nobody ever remembers. 5-year guarantee, when did it go in? Obviously I've only bought it a couple of days ago. Today, I believe, is the 7th of the 3rd of 20. Next, I'm going to take the opportunity to do a complete hard reset on the vehicle systems. Now, disconnecting the battery like we have done basically resets your systems, clears memories, reboots, all the rest of it. But there is vestigial memory. Some systems remember things for an amount of time, so you'd normally leave this off for a few hours. I don't want to do that, so a hard reset is achieved like so. Note, the battery is not connected. Nothing is connected to the battery whatsoever. You get your positive lead and your negative lead, and you put them together and you make good contact. Now nothing will remember anything. So that's what we mean by hard reset. Okay, so at the moment I've still got my plastic covers on these terminals, and as we said previously, we're going to put the positive battery terminal back on first, because if I muck it up and start connecting this to earth, it doesn't matter at this stage because earth isn't connected to anything else. So from a 10mm, I always like to tighten it a bit and then get the terminal to turn a little bit, so you know that smearing contact with the relatively soft post, then pinch the rest of it up. If you've got green furriness or white furriness around these terminals, you've got a bad contact. If the battery's dry and you've got good contact, you shouldn't get any of that. And in a car like the XK8, where it's inside the vehicle, in the trunk or boot, you really shouldn't be getting corrosion. So if you have, assume you've got a really bad connection. Save these to put on the old battery. Put our boot floor back. Just on cue because it's starting to rain. Getting nasty out there. So we're back in the car again. Let's see what happens. So put my key in the ignition. Turn on the ignition. 12.8. Ignition on. Still showing fail. Foot on brake. Nice start. Charging nicely. Turn on our Hi-Fi. As expected, you've got code because the memory is completely obliterated. I know the code for my system is 2631. So we go down here, 2, 6, 3, 1. And that causes the aerial to go up. So we're back in action. The fact that my car knew that it had got a traction control or stability fail before it even moved it suggests that it's not getting a bad signal, it's getting no signal from something that is open circuit when it should be a resistive circuit. So that may still be a bad connection on one of the wheel sensors, it might be a bad wheel sensor, it might be something else. So next time we'll investigate a little further into that. If you want to stop that message, it's an amber warning, which means you can drive the car, just be aware. Then just go over to your little control center thing. There's a button that says clear, and currently it's alternating between traction control fail and stability control fail. If I press it once, that's the traction control fail message gone. Press it again, stability control message gone, and it's brought up another value, which is my mileage, and I can now use the trip computer to cycle through all my normal bits and pieces. The amber light in the instrument tells you you've got an issue. The ABS over here reminds you that it's a connection with the brake system. And if I hit the clear button again, as I have, it brings back those messages. So they're not lost, but you can take them out of your field of view so that it's easier to drive the car by just hitting the clear button. Because the car has been completely reset, this is typical. So the window's slightly open, and whenever I touch the door handle, so you can get both in view, it drops, it drops, it drops, but it never goes back. So you need to teach the memories. We've got a separate video in detail on this, but basically wind all the way down. Oh, keys in the ignition, that's what we need. So ignition on, all the way down, and wait for the click, all the way up, and wait for the click. Same with the passenger side, and there's a little faint click. Turn the ignition off. Now close your door. The window should rise into the seal, and when you lift the handle it drops, and when you shut the door it rises again. And if you keep lifting the handle once, it doesn't keep dropping. So that's when you know you've taught your windows. So whilst that wasn't particularly good news for me in terms of I've still got an issue to resolve, I'm pleased I've changed the battery. I know that was past its sell-by date, so to speak. It's another little thing that's moved forward on the car, and we will continue the investigation next time. So see you again real soon on To The Garage. Romita, actually, I believe is the correct pronunciation. And it's just a float in a